So, in this class, we are going to discuss about the solar energy. The major source of solar energy is called sun. So, this solar energy is utilized or used to convert various forms of energies. Among those, we get the electricity is also one of the type which is generated from the solar energy. In this concept, we will discuss regarding that how the solar energy is converted into electrical energy. Some materials are responsible for this conversion from solar energy into electrical energy. Those cells or materials are called as an photovoltaic cells. Generally, these photovoltaic cells are made up of silicon semiconductor. So, continuously light is hits on this semiconductor which produce electricity. Suppose if you stop the hitting of light, the production of electricity is also stopped. While go through this concept, first of all we know what is meant by photovoltaic cell. Generally, photovoltaic cell is made up of a semiconductor, especially silicon semiconductor. This silicon semiconductor is responsible for the conversion from solar energy into electrical energy through a physical process is called as photovoltaic effect. According to the photovoltaic effect, when a sunlight strikes on the surface of that silicon semiconductor material which produce electrical energy. So, this process is called as a photovoltaic effect. Here, when sunlight strikes on the surface of some semiconductor material which produce electricity through the migration of electrons, this physical phenomenon is called as a photovoltaic effect. Words tells that photo means light. By hitting of light on some certain material, we get the voltage. This physical phenomenon is called as a photovoltaic effect. Simply we can call it photovoltaic cell. Let us see that construction and working of a typical single PV cell or photovoltaic cell. A single PV cell is made up of a thin wafer layer of silicon semiconductor. So, this is a single chip of silicon semiconductor. The photovoltaic cell is made up of a thin silicon semiconductor, a thin wafer layer of silicon semiconductor. It has to be differentiated two layer. The above ultra thin layer is doped by trivalent materials like phosphorus. So, this type or this layer is called as an P-type material. So, entire PV cell is made up of a thin wafer layer of silicon semiconductor. The above ultra thin layer is doped by trivalent materials such as phosphorus. So, this layer is considered as P-type silicon semiconductor, means that trivalent impurities such as phosphorus is doped on the silicon layer, upper layer. So, this layer is considered as P-type silicon semiconductor layer. The below ultra thin layer is doped by pentavalent materials such as boron. This layer is called as N-type silicon semiconductor. When sunlight strikes on the surface of photovoltaic cell, these two layer, P-type and N-type layer, which form one junction. In between these two layers, it will form a junction. That junction is called as an PN junction. Due to the formation of this PN junction, the electrons are continuously stimulated ejected and migrated from p type to n type or n type to p type. There is a migration. So these electrons are called as an light stimulated electrons. When sunlight strikes on the surface of PV cell, which ejects electrons and also migrated from n type to p type, these electrons are called as light stimulated electrons. What else that? Electrons stimulated by the hitting of light. Those electrons are called as an light stimulated electrons. These light stimulated electrons are getting some momentum and direction which flow along with the particular circuit. In the opposite direction, the current will flow. So this is called how the sunlight is converted into electrical energy through a semiconductor cell or device. So this device is called as an photovoltaic cell, and this is called anti-reflective coating, so which avoid the reflection of sunlight. So here the light from the sun, which is in the form of photons, with the energy E is equal to h mu. So generally this energy is given rise to electrical energy. So this is on how the conversion from solar energy is converted into electrical energy with the help of a particular semiconductor cell or device. This cell is called as an photovoltaic cell. By using this cell, the photo or light is converted into electricity or voltage. So this is a construction and working of the photovoltaic cell. I'll go through the sentence. Photovoltaic cell is made up of a thin wafer layer of silicon semiconductor device. The upper ultra thin layer is doped by pentavalent material like phosphorus. The upper layer is called as N-type silicon semiconductor, and below layer is doped by trivalent material like boron, is called as P-type silicon semiconductor device. When sunlight strikes on the surface of PV cell, the energy comes from the sun is associated with light or photon. The expression is, our energy is equal to hc by lambda. H is a Planck's constant, c is the intensity of the light, and lambda is the wavelength of the sunlight in nanometers. This is a process or working. Due to the hitting of sunlight on the PV cell, which form a junction, the name of the junction is called as PN junction. Due to the formation of PN junction, which continuously stimulate the electrons and migrated from N-type side to P-type or P-type side to N-type. These electrons are called as light stimulated electrons. So these electrons are get some momentum and direction which flowing through the circuit at the opposite direction, so the current will flow. Generally the voltage obtained by the PV cell is directly proportional to the intensity of the sunlight. The more intense sunlight will produce the more voltage, and also depends on the size and efficiency of the PV cell also. An anti-reflective layer is coated over the PV cell. The material is made up of silicon nitride or titanium dioxide. So generally PV cell produces an voltage of 0.5 to 0.6 volt of direct current under open circuit. So this is called construction and working of a typical single PV cell. The major advantages and disadvantages. Generally PV cell provide suitable electrical energy to the system. You know that each single cell produce 0.5 volt. Suppose you can connect 10 cells, you get 5 volts. You can connect 100 cells, you get some 50 volts, like that. So how much voltage is required? You can connect the device. That's the reason. So PV cell provide a suitable energy to the particular system. And solar energy is unlimitable, and it is renewable source of the electrical energy. And it form or these are considered as an eco-friendly source of nature, because this is do not produce any harmful or toxic products. For PV cells are even though used in remote areas to produce some electricity. Photovoltaic cell reduces the global warming because it absorbs the sunlight which reduces the heat. That reason this is called, it reduces the global warming. PV cells provide power for spacecraft and satellites. And finally, it has quick installation and safety measurement. But important disadvantage is that sunlight is a diffused source of energy. The intensity is varied second by second, minute by minute. It is not a constant. We did not get the constant voltage due to the variation of the intensity. Installation is quick, but the expensive is high. For our individual homes, it will take around 3 lakhs for installation purpose. That reason it is not an economic source of individual person to get the electricity in our home. And generally PV cell is produce direct current, but we need the alternative current for our home applications. We need to convert this DC to AC by using one more device that is called as an inverter. So this is called as an photovoltaic cells construction, working, advantages and disadvantages. The next is, how can we produce the solar grade silicon? First of all, what is meant by solar grade silicon? I'll go through the construction working of PV cell. PV cell is mainly made up of a semiconductor, especially silicon. The above layer is doped by phosphorus, below layer is doped by boron. What is the need to doping technique? Doping is nothing but addition of impurities to the material. You know that semiconductor is in between the conductor as well as insulator. These semiconductors are sometimes behaves as an conductor and sometimes behaves as an insulator. To maintain the extrinsic semiconductor property, that material particularly remains in the semiconductor property, we need to add some impurities. That technique is called as an doping technique. And that silicon is called as an solar grade silicon. First of all, we can produce the silicon, pure silicon, which is doped or addition of impurity to the silicon. So that is useful for the production of PV cell. Those cells are called, or those silicon is called as an solar grade silicon. Generally, the production of solar grade silicon, which is done by one process, is called as an union carbide process.